This is Mark, Skinny E Media. I've been fairly busy with my interviews lately, but been keeping myself occupied as always. And here we have the great Gillies MacKinnon, who directed a film that I really liked, even if the critics not so much, called The Last Bus, that starred Timothy Spall and Phyllis Logan. How do you do there?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Nice to have you on board. I'm always happy to support British cinema whenever I can, particularly Scottish and Cymraeg, or even Northern Irish, because England gets a lot of
Mm.
representation. I'm more than happy to ask about the inspiration for The Last Bus. The story, one would make you believe that it's almost based on something that actually happened. One source said it was inspired by a man named Richard Ellaway, and he, travelled throughout the UK in 2008. Now I know it was written by someone else. I think Joe Ainsworth.
Yeah, Joe.
Um, the
No,
inspiration for it was
inspiration was his father and his father-in-law, because when they got their bus passes, and people in America and other countries may not know what a bus pass really is, but when you reach the age of, I think it's 60 or something in Britain, you can get free transport. You get a bus pass. You can jump on any bus you like and you can just take off. And that's what Joe's father did with his father-in-law, who they were great friends. And when this happened, they were so excited. These two old chaps took off together, and Joe wrote down bus pass. He had a feeling that this was going to lead somewhere. And it took him a month or two to return to that thought. But that's when the film started to form itself in his mind. And so he wrote it, and I was in a film festival in Turin on the jury, and Timothy Spall was at the festival. So I kind of seeked him out, and he was much younger than he should be. He's actually only was his early 60s, whereas he had to be nearly 90. But there was something about Tim that just gave me the confidence that he could do that. So we offered the film to him and he took it. And that was a great thing because, Tim's performance has been, really held the whole film together. He just won the best actor at Bari Film Festival in Italy. It seems everybody who sees the film is moved by Tim's performance, except some critics, as you pointed out. So there were some critics who were rather sniffy about the film. But the funny thing is that what we've seen, witnessed, and heard about continually is audiences being really moved by the film. Weepy audiences, people coming out and admitting to have been weeping during the film. And I've been making films for a long time, but I've never heard this before. So many people being touched by the film. And I think that Tim's performance managed to, focus that really, that emotional connection that the audiences seem to have, even if some of the critics don't.
well, sometimes you don't take the critics to heart. There, they've often, I would say, have been bribed to say a certain film is good. You see all these superhero films by Marvel and DC getting strong reviews, or the latest film that was made so it can get Oscars and BAFTAs. They'll say, "Oh, rave reviews! It will get a Grand Jury Prize at Cannes or Berlinale." It's definitely, in many ways, reminded me of my late grandfather, who was born when Canada was still had a strong British influence, but he lived in Great Britain most of his life, particularly in the county of Kent. And he was a man that was a bit wily, that had a bit of a wit to him, just like Tim Spall's character as he goes down south. And just like him and my father, who my father's still alive, we went down to Cornwall a lot of times. So this film has a strong personal connection for me that might not be to anyone else's, and I think that's the ultimate charm of it. Then it's a lovely take on the British countryside through and through, from Scotland all the way to Cornwall, and I think that's the ultimate charm of it. I know it seems like I'm a bit rambling on there, but Tim Spall himself has been a very great actor. I remember seeing him when I was a bit of a young lad in Chicken Run. He voiced one of the mouses or rats, and then I saw him in All or Nothing. He was certainly a lot bigger back then, but he's lost a lot of weight since. When he was in Denial on the Summer of Rockets TV show, and even played Churchill on The King's Speech. So, yes, if I was in the BAFTA committee or the Academy Awards, I would definitely nominate him for Best Actor.
Well, that's great. Thanks. The thing that I remember Tim saying to me in a very modest, almost puzzled way, he said, well, people seem to find me sympathetic. But he said it with great modesty. And that seems to be true. You know, that's the one thing that I've found out. Anyway, the thing is that he had to age. He had to age considerably. Now, he did it, but there were two ways that we did this. One of them was that Tim brought himself, he brought a physicality, you know, he brought a theory of how he was going to hold himself and how he was going to walk, to do with balance and everything. And he brought that and he showed it to me, and I just thought, I saw him turn into an old man before my eyes. The other one was we had a great makeup person who just found a way to accentuate anything in Tim that was aging. So he wasn't sitting in the chair for 2 hours or 3 hours every morning doing prosthetics, you know. He was coming in, it would take maybe 20 minutes or so of intense work, and then he was out on the set. And the combination of these two things really, I think, made the aging process work for the film, you know.
Oh yes, I could even nominate with the makeup and hairstyling category as well, because, like you said, he is in his early 60s, but you would almost believe that he was a man on his last days, and the way he approaches it was with such conviction that it almost. I didn't cry during the film, to be honest with you, but I definitely felt like, wow, that actually made me feel better about myself. Very powerful and emotive, as I would put it towards. And in regards to other matters surrounding the film, I did notice some. Well, the friend I saw it with said there was a bit of a satirical element behind it as well, as we follow along the man's journey, and he also sees a racist passenger, a verbally aggressive bus driver, and a sexed-up couple. I don't know if that's Mr. Ainsworth or your way of sort of poking fun at British society, or maybe that's just he wrote it as it was.
I think that I took Joe's script, and obviously as a director, you put the tone into the thing, you know, you put the emphasis into the thing and all the rest. But I didn't change Joe's script. I mean, that wasn't necessary. So we took the script as it was. However, the tone, the humour, or various other things are probably what the director with the actor, you know, contribute to the situation. And I don't like to make a film that's very, very serious and only serious, you know. I've made serious films before, like a film about the First World War, Regeneration, known in America as Behind the Lines, I think. But I would never want to make any film that's serious. I always need to have some humor in it, because without humor, it's not real to me. I mean, you know, because humor is in life. Humor is in the darkest places sometimes. So I would always want, and it's also, if you can get the audience to be amused and to laugh, that's a release of emotion. That loosens the emotion in the audience. And then when you come to the serious part, you know, as long as it's actually serious, you know, then the audience is more susceptible. You know, they're more open if they've had a laugh. If they've laughed, they're more open to feel something sad. So that's the way I approach filmmaking generally, actually.
I would definitely agree with that. Looking at previous films in your filmography, there's always that sort of unintentional element of humor here and there. Some ones are a little bit more overt about, like the Whiskey Galore, But the drama's always there. But I think this one's evenly handled in a way that doesn't feel clunky. It didn't feel like well, this is for my grandmother in case she's listening to this. Ladies in Lavender. That's one of her favorite films.
Mhm.
Hopefully I can show her this when it comes out on DVD, Blu-ray, or VOD, and tell her that you'll definitely get a kick out of this one. Maybe I'm a bit wrong in seeing that there's satirical elements in the script, but I thought, yeah, he's poking fun at all the oddball characters that you meet in 21st century British society.
Yeah,
That,
sure.
that bus
Yeah,
driver that said, your pass won't work. Can you take it or leave it? And then everyone was
yeah.
complaining about him. Even that raised my blood pressure a little bit too, because I've had
Mhm.
an encounter like that myself. Because I just wanted to get down to Tottenham Court Road to visit, of all places, the BBFC, which is where they, give the film the classifications. Well, I suppose it's got 12A's, so yeah,
Mhm.
I can relate to that there. And in regards to you, the filmmaker, in the Scottish cinema scene, how do you feel it's like for you? Because unfortunately, not a lot of people know your name that well. You're kind of like a Steven Soderbergh. You've done films in various styles and genres, but you don't have quite the sort of prolific element of Train Spotting, which was by Danny Boyle, Braveheart, Mel Gibson's film. What do you think is the state of Scottish cinema and its future?
Well, I mean, in the first place, um, I'm Scottish, and I left there when I was about 23, and I came to London, and I still live in London. So I'm not confined to Scottish filmmaking, if you know what I mean. I love to go back to Scotland, and I love to make a film there. I made a film called Small Faces at the time of Train Spotting. They were making Train Spotting at the same time, and that film was quite semi-autobiographical, really, about growing up in Glasgow in the 60s, a period where there were loads of gangs, So it's a film about not only about violence but about art, because the young protagonist, his older brother's going to art school, and yet the boy's kind of torn between the two worlds. The oldest brother is in the gangs and a bit of a lunatic, and the middle brother is going to art school, and the younger brother has all the potential to go either way, So there's a kind of a pulling and pushing and all of that. That was a very important film for us. But of course, Weinstein got behind Train Spotting, and that was something that was a far bigger film. But that's fine. It's like that's fine. We were happy with the film that we made, and very pleased to have been able to do that, to capture something so personal.
Oh yes, I definitely understand. I haven't seen Small Faces myself, but I'm familiar by the title because when I used to go to Blockbuster back in the day, I'd often see what types of films I'd be interested in, even if I wasn't quite old enough to see them, at least at the
Mm-hmm.
time. But that will definitely pique my curiosity just because of my virtue of it's a Scottish cinema about the grown-up experience, and from the storyline, it almost sounds almost like a sort of riff on like a Scorsese film, or for that matter, like a Bronx Tale, the Robert De Niro movie.
Well, that's quite interesting you say that, because actually it's not Scorsese, it's Visconti. The film which really influenced me for Small Faces was a film called Rocco and His Brothers. Very, very long film about an Italian family, who move from the country into the city, and it's about boxing. And that was the film which this film about brothers was the film which was the underlying influence for me, and it was Visconti, really. But of course, Visconti would have been an influence to Scorsese, so you're onto something there. You're on the right track.
So like a common thread, I
Yeah.
suppose. Well, everyone gets their influences one way or another. Um, but you are definitely one of the unspoken legends of the scene itself. In many ways, you harken back to, and I've noticed this, thinking about Last Bus just the other day, Bill Forsyth, Gregory's Girl, and Comfort and Joy, Local Hero. I love Comfort and Joy and Local Hero, and it definitely reminded me of those two particular films, sort of small scale underdog stories, aimed at a sort of audience that likes those sort of things that you'll watch on BBC One or Two in midday.
Is
I
that
don't know
kind
if
of
that's a bad thing, but I think that's a great thing because I used to watch a lot of those sort of films with my grandmother, and even my mother. She is a fan of those types of films.
yes? I mean, there is that kind of a particular Scottish, perhaps even Glasgow humour, which is quite a gentle humour actually at times. Quite it's just whimsical kind of humour. I mean, going back to Small Faces, whereas my influence was Rocco and his brothers, my brother, his influence was My Life as a Dog because of the whimsicality of the young boy. He was the young boy at the centre of My Life as a Dog, which is so you take your influences. Now, I mean, I've been making a lot of films for quite a long time now, for over 30 years, and the young actor in Small Faces, Ian Robertson, just said to us the other day, and not the other day, but about 6 months ago, I wonder what happened to Lex, the young boy in Small Faces, when he turned 40, because Ian has turned 40 now. So my brother's now writing that story, and it's not like Small Faces 2, like Trainspotting 2. It's not that. It's a different title altogether. It's called Smile, and it's going to look into what happens to a child, when he's lived a life and turns 40, but he still carries with him the curse of betraying his brother without meaning to, betraying his brother who is then murdered. And that's a secret that nobody else knows except one other person. And that one other person and he come face to face because they both share the same secret. The other boy also killed his brother, who is the enemy of their gang. It's a complicated thing without seeing the film, but it's two boys who've carried the guilt of the death of their own brothers for 25 years, and they meet, and what happens to them. So, I guess that there are themes that stay with a filmmaker and recur and need to be followed up, and in this case, that's what we're doing. So we're following that story up.
I'll definitely keep my ear out for the second project to come. There's a lot of stories that need to be told, especially on an original Endor scale. We can't just rely on reinterpretations of Brideshead Revisited or Shakespeare, or more superhero films and TV shows, or Korean TV about poor people being killed, playing children's games and whatnot. That was just a bit of humor I done for the audience out there watching this. But yes, please do support independent cinema whenever you can. It might not always be there available at Tesco or your local cinema and whatnot. And in regards keeping up with the film itself, Mr. Spall, he became the face of the film itself. And like you said, he also kind of lost a bit of a train of thought there. My apologies. But I will say, with the similarities to a script that I wrote, because before I even knew that The Last Bus exists, there was actually a script that I wrote called Morally Bankrupt, which follows a Scotsman living in Kent, and he relocated during the Thatcher years, and then he's moving all the way up north in this sort of dystopian era Britain that's been plagued by COVID and Brexit and internal politics and regional divisions. If anything, I'll be more than happy to send you a copy of the script just to sort of follow this man's journey. But it's certainly a different beast than The Last Bus. But I did notice have a lot of similarities involved. But I was very happy to see, hey, that's why I saw this film particularly, because it reminded me a lot of that story and also the beautiful countryside and a celebration of British geography as well. Getting back on the production level end of things, I don't know if it was filmed before or after COVID, but I know there's been a lot of struggles.
Before COVID. It filmed before COVID, and then it went into the COVID fridge for a year because we didn't know if anybody was going to go back to cinemas or not. So I had to sit in the COVID fridge while we waited for things to thaw out, and then it came out eventually. But you see, for me, this film and all the encounters, because there are a lot of actors in this film, because every day he gets on a different bus and every day he meets new people. For me, he has a reason for doing this journey. And the reason has got to do with grief and loss. So he knows why he's doing the journey, and he's going through a ritual of reversing a journey he took 60 years before, you know. He's doing it exactly in the reverse order, and it's a ritual. But the purpose of it has got to do with grief and loss. He never thinks of the journey. He only thinks of the ritual. But what, of course, he's forgetting is it's a journey. And he's about to, at the very last moments of his life, he's about to re-encounter life. And he never thought about that. All he thought about was the ritual and the journey and to settle and resolve the issue of grief and loss. But he forgot about what was going to happen when he went back out into the world. And so all these encounters he has bring him back into life again, you know, bring him in such a way that he actually has an effect on the people that he meets, you know, without trying to tell anybody how they should be living or anything. He just holds inside him an authority of experience or something, you know, and when he meets people, he has an effect on these people and they have an effect on him. So it changes him, that journey. It changes something in him because he didn't anticipate that. He never thought about that side of it, you know?
I would definitely agree with that assessment. You know, his reinterpretation, or he's become woke to life itself, and the sort of twists and turns that follow along with it. Some of the encounters that he meets have been amicable, like the family that let him stay at their apartment, at least for a night, and some of them have been rude, like the other encounters I've just mentioned earlier on. And I think that's the charm of it all, is because this isn't necessarily a film that's just aimed at a click audience of, you know, the over 60 crowd. This is a film that also supports the idea that one man on his journey can find a sense of purpose in him. And I don't want to give any spoilers for the very end that occurs, but I know just recently I lost my grandmother, and I even myself, this is the first time I'm actually saying this for my channel, had siblings that died during stillbirth, and watching those particular scenes was not easy to come across. Unfortunately, I didn't cry, but it definitely had an effect on me, as well as the depictions of the British countryside and the sort of travelogue element behind it is definitely a powerful tool indeed. I don't know if I'm just mentioning my words a bit repetitively there, but that's just at least my take on it. This will definitely be a film I'll be seeing and revisiting again and again to see, you know, for inspiration, and also because the script that I wrote even before I knew this existed has elements here and there. And in regards to the production, which we already talked about, the future of British cinema itself with Brexit and film financing, how's it been going for you? I know it's been going to be quite a difficult journey now that we've can't get financing from like the EU.
Mm-hmm. Well, my daughter, Ivana MacKinnon, has just produced a film which has taken her some years to produce. It's called Tuesday at the moment, and it's got a decent budget, and it's got a first-time Croatian director. But they had to bring the film down in the last few days because of a COVID outbreak. So they're carrying the last several days of the film they have to carry, and they will then shoot that. So they're cutting the film, but without the last few days. So you know, one feels a bit vulnerable making films under these circumstances, of course. I think that, I mean, personally, I'm not a fan of Brexit. I think Brexit is causing us immense problems, and frankly, the government just keeps going, shh, don't mention Brexit. But I think it's causing us big problems, and I hope that it doesn't affect our ability to do proper co-productions as we always have with Europe. You know, I hope so. We'll see.
Because I know some of the great British filmmakers like Ken Loach, and I think even Mike Leigh to some extent had to rely on financing from Spain and France. I
But
think
they always,
Germany.
yeah, both of them have had very good arrangements. You know, they've continued to make films based upon the kind of support they have in Europe. I'm not sure how that affects them.
Well, I know they're more established names. A lot of auteurs seem to love Mr. Loach. I think he's popular in France as well, which
Yes,
already has a
yes.
film industry that's highly supportive, more so than in the UK, which is a bit strange. Yeah, that's for
Yeah,
me.
I think. Well, I think perhaps he's got a kind of a niche. You know, um, there's something. He has some arrangement. It's a very kind of fortuitous situation for him. You know.
Oh yes, I understand there. We even leads me to a side question, because I know Mike Leigh has done some films that are a bit less political and have a sort of slice of life element to them, like Happy Go Lucky or Another Year. I'm sure he would probably like The Last Bus. I don't know if he's seen it or not, or sent you a letter, but
No, I mean I know Mike Leigh, but I haven't seen him for a while. Nobody's seen anybody since COVID.
oh yes, well, I understand there. It's almost as though they're affecting independent filmmakers, but they're giving people who make the next James Bond or the next superhero movie a pass simply because they got them, the monetary value and they got the American backing, which is not playing the rules very fairly there, I would say. But at least that's just my take on it.
Well, everyone's still trying to make their films. You know, everyone's out there still trying to make their films. So hopefully, you know, the film industry will survive and people will continue to go to cinemas. That's what we hope.
oh, definitely, and I
I think
noticed
that
this.
people missed going to cinemas, and you know, you don't want your whole life to be happening in your living room, do you?
No, that there's a room for that. It's called television. But this is a film, even if
Hmm.
it's not heavy on the special effects, it is a small, intimate drama that almost anyone can enjoy, really. For the young, there's also the humorous elements and seeing Tim Spall's character making such adversity. And for the elderly population, they have a lot to relate to this as well, just like my grandmother from my father's side. I know my grandmother from my mother's side just passed away, but I'm sure she would have loved this film too. So yes, I do encourage more people to go see this, even if it has made about, I think, more than £300,000 at the box office, which actually is not too bad for an independent.
I think I was told in UK that it were more like 500, which is quite good. You know, that's what I was told last week.
It's actually better than some Hollywood productions that have come out recently. So,
Mm.
good job on Parkland Pictures and Entertainment and McKinnon and team for making that happen. And hopefully, one won't keep you too long, so you can have yourself a nice supper, maybe Bailey's on the rocks. My last question will be the advice for the young people trying
I,
to get into the film industry.
I wouldn't be drinking Gillies on the rocks. I mean, that's Irish whiskey.
Okay, let's just say Talisker. My
No,
father loved
yeah.
Talisker.
I mean, Bailey's isn't proper whiskey, you know.
Oh no, it's my personal favorite of mine. But I've tried a lot of the single malts, and it's a bit too strong for me. I'm more of a liqueur and gin person. No offense to all the
Yeah,
great
Bailey's
distilleries
is
of
quite
Scotland.
soft, really. I think, you know, it's quite a smooth kind of soft drink. You
Oh yes, there. I do have a soft spot for Talisker. Out of all the whiskies I've tried, that is arguably the best one.
Hmm.
Um, the way they use the peats and also sort of they call angel share. I've been to the distillery at least one time with my father, and oh, it brings me back. Definitely, indeed. You could even mix it a little bit with Guinness, but don't tell them I've said that.
Hmm. Yeah, well, actually, yeah, no, I mean Guinness. I'm all for Guinness. But only drink that in Ireland.
Oh
I mean,
yes,
it's like I've never had a really great pint of Guinness anywhere except Ireland. I don't know, it's magic in Ireland, but elsewhere it can be not so magic. Anyway, the advice to young filmmakers, yeah, to find out why you want to make films. Don't try to be a filmmaker. Don't try to fulfill a role, because you think it's going to be glamorous, or you think it's going to be sexy, or you think it's going to be cool. That's rubbish. And don't think you can just learn technique and that's going to do it for you, because the technique in itself is nothing if you don't know why you're doing it. If you haven't worked out why you want to make films, without that thing burning inside of you, you've got nothing. So that's what you got to find out, because that's what's going to sustain you. That's what is going to make you distinctive. If you can find out why you want to be doing this, and that's what you've got to look inside yourself and find out, what story do you want to tell? I really want to tell that story. When you feel that way, you're ready to make a film.
I think that is the best way to approach your creative habits and your career ambitions. Because I know some people like to get into certain industries, even film included. Business probably a little bit more so they can make quick cash. If you're very passionate about it and you have the ambition and skills, um, make with it there. I know when I made my documentary, Pandemic Pandemonium, I didn't have any budget for that except to submit to a few film festivals. I got selected. One of them, actually, two of them were from Pinewood Studios as part of like a showcase of amateur filmmakers. And that was a sort of satirical documentary about the pandemic as we see fit, like an observation of life. So yes, like you said, very good advice. If you've got the ambition, go for it there, and follow through your inspirations and influences. And we're very happy to have you on board, Mr. MacKinnon. I hope you have a wonderful night and try to stay safe with everything that's going on with Delta variant and all. And also, if you do see Last Bus, please do not buy a ticket to Last Duel or Last Night in Soho just because of name confusion over the word last. Last Bus is not the same thing as Last Night in Soho or Last Duel.
All right.
Just a little bit of a joke for everyone there. But you take care now, all right?
Okay, man. Cheers. Thank you.